Hello and welcome to part 3 of the Mama You're Not Broken audiobook, written and read by me, Anna Cusack. Today's episode is looking at the chapter around uncertainty. So at the start of this chapter, I have written in a little grey box, everyone who has ever been a baby considers themselves an expert on what you should do with yours. There is so much information and misinformation and advice, solicited and unsolicited, that comes when you become a mother. And I hope that this chapter allows you to help you find your own feet a bit. Enjoy. Before we start this chapter, I just want to remind you that you can order a physical copy of this book and also see a full reference list at www.annacusack.com.au/book. You can also head to that website to jump into my membership for either $35 Australian dollars a month standard price or $25 if you're experiencing financial pressure or identify as someone from a marginalised group. The membership is a subscription which gives you access to a monthly group workshop or online circle, 2 days of private voice message mentoring per month with me, and also includes an active allyship contribution to pay the people behind the diverse voices you'll be hearing from in season 3 of the podcast for their time and expertise. There are no lock-in contracts and you can sub in and out at any time. If you're not up for the whole membership deal but want to support the podcast and its guests, you can become a patron of the podcast for $5 a month. Okay, let's get started. Chapter 2, Uncertainty. Before I put pen to paper to create this book, I stood in my local bookstore and scanned the shelves of the babies and parenting section. There were dozens of books on pregnancy and birth, a few about becoming a dad or how to slay motherhood, and stacks on introducing solids and toilet training. There were books about childhood brain function and emotional development, others that claimed their methods could shape your kid into some kind of genius in maths, sports, or music by age 5. There were books outlining a million different approaches to discipline and innumerable parenting paradigms that were vastly different, yet all written by doctors and endorsed by celebrities as the only parenting book you'll ever need. Some even had a by-the-hour playbook of what you must do with your baby and even which caregiver must do it, so as to prevent your weeks-old baby from growing into some psychopathic parent-destroying machine. If this is the competing advice in one section of one bookstore, is it any wonder we feel uncertain about how to mother our kids? Parenting instructions come at modern mothers from every angle. When my daughter arrived, family members, acquaintances, and even strangers in the street all wanted to know if she was a good baby. My standard response of, "I haven't had to call the cops once," was met with a mix of confusion, awkward laughter, and disdain. I soon learned that their good baby inquiry was code for, is she like a little puppy you can take cute pictures of while it sleeps a lot and continue life as normal? Or is she a pain in your ass, in which case, what are you doing wrong? A mum with a baby 4 months younger than mine told me that she could put her kids to bed and go out for dinner with her girlfriends. "I just make sure I'm back within 4 or 5 hours for the next feed," she said breezily. What did she know that I didn't? I was lucky to get to the bathroom and back before my little girl woke looking for me. Sometimes I would retreat from the actual people around me to the faraway, faceless people on my phone screen. I would fall into forum threads and social media wormholes about reflux or teething. When I tried to find quality sources of information, I realized even some of the usually reliable government-backed websites gave recommendations about baby care, feeding, and sleep that were decades out of date. Conflicting advice came from everywhere, whether I went looking for opinions or not. "Reading books with a child is the best start you can give them," said my mum. As I lay on the ground reading to my baby, an elderly relative walked past and said, "Independent play is very important. You're ruining that child." I was stoic on the outside, but inside all this conflicting advice was making me feel wobbly, like a kid trying to ride their bike without training wheels for the first time. Well-meaning reassurance only made it worse. "You were made to do this, just trust your intuition." Was I, really? It sure didn't feel like it. As I struggled, drowning in a sea of information overload and self-doubt, a mother of 7 threw me a life raft. "You're not failing, Mama. We're all winging it. Just some of us have been winging it long enough that it looks like we're flying." Aha! Maybe motherly intuition was a skill to be learnt, rather than something that should have just magically showed up the minute my baby landed on my chest. I have learnt stuff before. I can totally do this. 4 years ago, we moved back to my hometown. While I knew the road network well, my husband was brand new to the area and would set up navigation instructions for every drive, even the ones he took daily. He started looking for landmarks, gradually relying more and more on the environment around him for clues. Eventually, he did away with the GPS altogether. Trips that once took extreme concentration are now done almost on autopilot. I have come to believe that this is exactly what caring for a baby is like. At the start, it takes immense effort to work out what they need and how they prefer things done. It seems like it will be like this forever, but one day you wake up and realize the initial period of really hard mental slog is over. Like many babies do, my daughter would have periods of unsettled behaviour each day. I went looking for answers using conventional research methods, reading, researching, applying methods developed by experts. Some sources told me she was tired, others that she had wind, others that she was overstimulated, understimulated, or had undiagnosed allergies. Long story short, my quest for outside answers was a massive fail. I decided to look to the only person who was an expert in my baby, her. I had read that our brains start preparing for motherhood during pregnancy. Part of this process involves streamlining connections in the areas of the brain related to reading and interpreting facial expressions, body language, and other sensory information, essentially paving the way for a massive upgrade in these skills when baby arrives. These neural changes wouldn't make me an expert in baby language instantaneously, but I could definitely use them to my advantage. I put on my mama scientist hat and focused on collecting data of my own using my newly upgraded senses. The difference in our mutual understanding when I tried learning the touchy-feely way instead of the textbook way was almost immediate. I trialed things and became familiar with which facial expressions and cries were related to which requests. I noticed her tummy pressure, if her body was rigid or relaxed, and came to understand when she had wind and when she didn't. More often than not, if she was cranky around 3 p.m, she just wanted to get outside and would happily settle when I picked her up over my left shoulder and headed for our back door. Over time, my experiments ventured into other areas of our daily life, and my confidence grew. Bath time is one of the best ways to calm your child before bed, the book said. Not in this house, matey. The screaming that accompanied getting out of the bath and thrashing to get dressed after it was something to behold. We exchanged bath, books, and bedtime for books and boob in bed, and it worked a treat. Build up to a minimum of 20 minutes of tummy time per day to ensure proper motor development, they claimed. The only thing she hated more than getting dressed after a bath was tummy time. I don't think we ever hit 20 minutes. Once she could roll over, there was no way to keep her there anyway. Your baby will feed every 3 hours, the brochure said. It failed to mention that my child liked snacks between the main feeds and that in the evenings she would feed for 3 hours, not every 3 hours. Instead of questioning the quality or quantity of my milk, I just fed her when she wanted it. She was growing and happy. It wasn't that I'd magically found my motherly intuition or become a baby whisperer. I'd just seen her behaviours before and tried enough things enough times that I went straight to what worked in each situation. A 6-week baby massage program helped me hone my skills in sensory-based learning even more. Things that once took so much mental effort became almost second nature. I could now turn off my mama GPS and drive on autopilot. It turned out the experts weren't so expert in my baby after all. I followed her lead and it felt right. Despite this, I still had a little devil on my shoulder questioning if we were doing the right thing or spoiling her in some way. When we were at home, I could quiet this voice of doubt. My girl was content, and for the most part, so was I. Nevertheless, when we stepped out into the big wide world, I felt under the microscope. All it took was for me to see an impeccably dressed child playing with my daughter in her hand-me-down clothes and lopsided home haircut to make me question myself. At times like this, it helped to remember, A, the perfect mother doesn't exist. B, this child's mum probably feels just as exposed as I do, and C, different people have different values. Sustainability is a value that usually wins out for me over beauty. In the long run, it was better for me to sit with the short-term discomfort of, that mum must think I'm so neglectful, I should buy my daughter some new clothes, than it would have been to crank up my credit card bill buying new clothes when perfectly functional ones had been given to us. Asking myself where my values lie helps me have more compassion for myself and, when I imagine seeing a situation through their lens, for other mums too. It is easy for me to judge a mum buying ready-made meals when I value fresh food, but it could be that her value is on time with her kids after work over cooking. Neither of us is right or wrong in our mothering choices. We are each just doing our best with the resources we have available. One thing that troubles me in modern motherhood is that the resources we are given are not always as legitimate as they seem. Call me cynical, but it is the task of advertisers to plant problems in the minds of mothers of children of all ages to line their own pockets, never mind the ethics of the so-called solution they have for sale. Need to clean your house, but want your baby to have the best? There's a $400 rocker that sings and plays music for that. Traveling? Places that sell portable cots aren't obliged to tell you that manufacturers are able to advertise their cot as complying to Australian standards, even if they fail the criteria for breathability at the edge of the cot and therefore pose a major suffocation hazard. Weaning? Toddler formula is marketed to parents online, on television, and on billboards to get around the government's superficial adoption of the World Health Organization, WHO, memorandum that prevents advertising of milk substitutes for babies. This happens despite the National Health and Medical Research Council's position that non-breastfed children are fine on water and family foods without any kind of replacement formula after the age of 12 months. Some service providers, too, seem more interested in exploiting a mother's insecurities to boost their own egos or cut costs rather than supporting her in her time of need. When I worked in a health clinic, it always shocked me how little regulation there was in some areas. Any general practitioner, GP, with an interest in skin cancer can, for example, call themselves a skin cancer specialist and establish a specialist skin cancer clinic. Although potentially misleading, this is perfectly legal, so long as the practitioners in question don't use the protected job titles of dermatologist, skin specialist, or oncologist, cancer specialist. Similarly, there are plenty of practitioners who offer specialist services to mothers and their babies with questionable levels of expertise. Baby sleep consultant, for example, is not a protected title. This means that no specific rules exist about which strategies and techniques people who ordain themselves with this title can use. Without regulation, any person or service can call their approach gentle, holistic, or even evidence-based. Unless a mother knows to ask where these people have been trained, if they have been trained at all, and do her own research, she can't be sure of the legitimacy of the methods they promote. While some services have been absolutely invaluable to me, thank you, helpline nurse who told me exactly what I needed to do when my baby ran a fever and went floppy, it feels like part of the public health system has fallen into their own trap on this one. Many upset mums have recounted to me their experiences in taxpayer-funded sleep schools. Some report being told that they needed to break in the baby to sleep, much like riders might break in a new horse and not give in to their baby's hysterical cries. That governments fund these decades-outdated practices tells us as much about their commitment to the idea that babies need to keep quiet overnight so parents can get up and be useful workers, as it does about their awareness of research, about the impact of stress on infant brain development, emotional resiliency, or long-term health. Another grey area of terminology that leads many a new mother up the garden path is around the term lactation consultants and confusion around which professionals to turn to for breastfeeding advice. I have met countless mothers who've been told by their local hospital's lactation consultant, midwife, visiting child health nurse, GP, and even paediatrician that their baby's pain-inducing latch looks fine. Many of these women endured recurrent mastitis, bleeding nipples, or switched to formula before finding out that the practitioner they really needed to see for a thorough examination and treatment plan was an international board-certified lactation consultant, IBCLC. An IBCLC is a nursing mother's guardian angel, and I recommend to all pregnant women who intend to breastfeed their babies to locate and save the contact details of an IBCLC. Ideally, you'd also save the number of your country's breastfeeding phone support service. In Australia, this is the Australian Breastfeeding Association's free 24/7 helpline. In many other countries, it is La Leche League. Taking simple steps like this before baby arrives are super helpful preventative measures against falling down the Dr. Google rabbit hole at 3 a.m. Even with the best laid plans in place, the timing of when to reach out for professional support can be tricky. The difference between coping and struggling for a new mum can be as little as one bout of baby crying inconsolably. It can be one sleepless night, or when you find yourself nodding off, holding your baby in the chair, and wake horrified on realizing what could have just happened. It can be one well-intended, just let me give them a bottle from your partner or a grandparent, when you've had a really hard birth and you so badly want breastfeeding to work. Still, we might feel sheepish about taking up a professional's time, a valuable resource that could be provided to another mum who needs it more than I do. As a privately practicing IBCLC recently said to a client of mine, when a woman phones me for an appointment, I know she's in crisis. I'll come today. I can hear it in your voice. I should have seen you 2 days, even 2 weeks ago. Even if you might need to cancel it, please make the appointment sooner rather than later. Speaking from personal experience, health practitioners are very used to mothers cancelling at the last minute when a kid needs an immediate pickup from daycare, or the whole family gets nits, or the toddler decides to turn on a tap and flood the bathroom. We would much rather you ring and try for an appointment in hope than have you sitting alone in the downward spiral of stress and self-doubt while we do paperwork in a lull between appointments. When it comes to maternal health services, if you have the thought, I shouldn't call, someone else needs more help than I do, I urge you to take it as your indicator that it's time you made the call. I promise, if someone else truly does need it more, we will be upfront with you and reschedule. For many women, uncertainty builds alongside excitement as the baby's guest date nears. Unless you're having a medically scheduled birth, your baby is probably more interested in its own timing than yours or your birth team's. One of the many things I loved about having a doula at my home birth was that we left it to her to suggest that it was time to call the midwife. My brain stayed in primal birthing mode while she reminded me to breathe and took care of the phone call. She was bang on with the timing too. The midwife asked to listen to me through my next contraction. Seconds later, I hit transition and vomited. The midwife was on her way in a flash, arriving in my lounge room an hour before my baby did. For others, the uncertainty they are dealing with is not about timing, birth itself, or even their own decision-making capacity, but how to manage the fallout from making decisions that are out of step with modern motherhood's social norms. I met Daniela at a birth story sharing circle, and wow, did she have a story to share. Healthy and finely attuned to her own body, Daniela elected to birth her baby at home with the support of only her partner and herbal medicines. Together, they made the decision to trust in the process of physiological birth, but would make a beeline for the local hospital if something didn't feel right to her during labour. Daniela describes her son Max's birth at home as both intense and empowering. Asking her family to come and meet the baby after a medically unsupervised birth did not go down quite so well though. One of the baby's grandparents refused to believe they could have been so reckless and refused to meet Max for over a fortnight. On visiting another grandparent during baby's first year, Daniela was told they would have to leave immediately if the baby got sick. The reason given was that they couldn't be sure of her ability to judge when medical care for her son was or wasn't needed. This dynamic is reflecting of much of our social patterning. The patriarchal model loves certainty, and we are used to its clearly defined processes. Work hard, follow the rules, and you will get your paycheck. Yet, there is very little certainty in mothering, and the well-honed, methodical, masculine parts of us find this very unsettling. Motherhood is a time we can trade certainty outside of us for clarity inside of us. What better time than now for our long suppressed, flowy, feminine energy to take the spotlight and give us something even better? It is a powerful experience to follow your gut feeling, not knowing quite where it will lead. When Wendy's son Alex was 6 years old, he had a ride on a friend's horse. Alex was scared of the noises the horse made, the feeling of riding, being so high from the ground, all of it. Despite this experience, Wendy faced intense social pressure to enroll him in horse riding lessons throughout his childhood. My mum was never once told she should take me horse riding, so why was Wendy repeatedly on the receiving end of such instructions from strangers who thought they knew best? While I was developmentally typical, Alex had a disability, and the local horse riding centre was touted as the place where kids with disability should go. "He'll get used to it. You should take him to a few lessons before making a decision," said people who were meeting Alex for the first time. Wendy's gut feeling said otherwise. No one in their right mind would ever suggest I take flying lessons to get over my fear of flying, Wendy recounts. Whenever I thought of taking him to that place, my stomach lurched. Wendy didn't know with certainty what Alex would love doing instead, but she had the clarity to know that horse riding was not the thing for him. "I stick to the things I love doing, and so can Alex, regardless of his disability," she says. Unsettlingly soon after my firstborn arrived, people started asking if we'd have another. Having pushed that question away for almost 2 years, it's now firmly back on our table. The certainty seeker in me wants proof before we do away with contraception. It craves certainty that I will be able to meet the physical and emotional needs of 2 children. It demands proof that our relationship can weather another possible infertility journey while also parenting, studying, working, and somehow making sure we have clean clothes to wear, meals to eat, and dishes to eat them from. It wants evidence that we can stay financially afloat with a second child. The catch is that none of these things can actually be proven unless we jump in the deep end. While my brain is getting tied up in knots, my body is speaking to me. If I can just press pause on my thinking brain and listen, the answer is waiting for me in the quiet. I can feel with absolute clarity that my bones ache with the knowing that I'm not done having babies. I also know plenty of women who expected to have a whole football team of children, but have decided with clarity that one and done is the way for them. The irony that I have danced, wrestled, and fought with this chapter more than any other is not lost on me. The chapter you are reading right now is my 5th attempt, having been edited multiple times afterwards. While I am here preaching flow and easefulness as the path to overcoming uncertainty, I pushed and struggled, trying to think and work my way through this section, instead of letting it be what it wanted to be. There is so much that can be said about uncertainty in both our mothering practice and our personal experiences of motherhood that I can't pretend to give a full rundown of what it's like for each and every mum. What I can tell you though is that I absolutely get how uncomfortable it can feel to be in that place of limbo. Maybe you want to set some boundaries, but you're uncertain if you can do so without your child's behaviour deteriorating, and if it did, if you would be able to cope with it. Been there. Maybe right now you're feeling uncertain about how to meet your own needs as well as those of your children, who all need to be supported in different ways. Maybe you're unsure of how to respond when your partner can't handle the kids. Maybe you're unsure of how you will keep it together if the person you plan to parent with has left the building or fallen ill, or hasn't stepped up to the plate as you'd hoped they would. Maybe you're unsure of your family's future because of the government's heartless parental support payments or immigration policies. Maybe you're debating whether your child's kindergarten or school is the right learning environment for them. Maybe your family is complete and you're not sure what to do with the rest of the embryos remaining in the lab freezer. I can't know what this experience is like for you, but I can assure you that if you're feeling shaky, you're not alone. Imagine an escalator in a busy shopping centre. Once you step on, all you have to do is keep still and hold the rail and it will carry you up to the next floor. You might find it a bit boring or even scary to be up so high. Does anyone else feel like this? No one talks about it, so you don't make a fuss. Everyone moves along at the same set speed that some man in an engineer's office determined was the ideal pace for interlevel travel. You step off the escalator, being careful so as not to fall on your face in public, and realize the new level is jam-packed. Suddenly there are people moving in every direction with noise and trolleys and kids and heads in phone screens. If you keep walking and weaving around these people, you will eventually get to a place where the crowds clear. With room to move, you're free to browse the bookstore, smell all the delicate handmade blends in the tea shop, or find the dress of your dreams. That first bit, getting off the escalator though, it feels really dicey. This is what motherhood is like. We step on the escalator the minute our first child comes into our care. We are carried along on our culture's externally paced conveyor belt that says, this is how it's done, and everyone else is doing it too, so don't make a fuss. Some people stay on this escalator forever, keeping nicely spaced and wondering where they will end up. These people are not you. As soon as we realize we are not actually broken, we are in the process of stepping off the escalator that is modern motherhood. Many women are excited to leave the place of controlled speeds, set directions, and handrails behind, but the temporary feelings of chaos that replace them can be shocking. Do not be alarmed, mama. This feeling of uncertainty means you have picked up the scent of the trail that has been waiting for you alone to find it. All you have to do is keep weaving, ducking through the noise of other people's opinions, and moving in the direction your gut feeling tells you to go until your path clears. Did you notice I said your path, not our path? Our mothering adventures will take us different places, and that's all part of the fun. While I'm taste testing chocolates, you might be headed to try on those killer heels you saw last week, or meeting your friend at the cinema. How wonderful that we get to follow our own hearts, to choose our own way. Uncertainty presents itself to help us learn mothering skills as we need them. It encourages us to get clear on what's important to us at any given time and to act accordingly. It is useful, temporary, and it does pass, but I wouldn't go getting too comfy. In a few hours, days, weeks, months, or years, a new challenge will arise. Did someone say tween years? And we'll face another transition point. We'll step onto this new escalator, rise to a new level, and feel the chaos all over again. Uncertainty is not failing. It is a sign we are learning and growing with our children. Mama, uncertainty is normal, and it's time we spoke about it. You're not hopeless, clueless, or useless for feeling this way, and you're certainly not broken. If anything, you're just stepping off the escalator and making a break for something better than you knew was even possible. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Please remember to subscribe and leave a 5-star review, and share with anyone you feel may benefit from this content. If you'd like to continue the conversation, join me on social media at Anna Cusack Postpartum, and head to my website www.annacusack.com.au to check out the ways we can work together. Please use the contact form on the website to inquire about having me run workshops with your client groups, or book me for corporate speaking or professional development presentations. See you next episode.